Hello, everyone. I'm Isadora Rangel at Florida Today. And as you know, Florida is starting to reopen parts of its economy, at least. And here on the Space Coast, we're already seeing some changes. And that's what we're going to be talking about today. Joining me is government editor Dave Berman. Welcome, Dave.
Thanks for having me here.
As you know, we had some technical difficulties. We just did a live stream with Susie Leonard, our food writer, talking about restaurants. So I highly encourage you to watch that. She's talking about which restaurants have opened. But now we're going to talk more of the business/government side of this pandemic. As you probably might have heard, if you were a beachgoer last week, the Brevard County Commission decided to lift restrictions on beach parking, which drew a lot of people to our local beaches over the weekend. But I want to begin. We will talk about beaches, but I want to talk about the latest breaking news, Dave, that I think you will be localizing either today or tomorrow, which is Norwegian Cruise Lines might be filing for bankruptcy. Tell us about what's going on. What do you know so far, and how could that impact us here?
Right. Norwegian Cruise Line just released financial statement today that indicated they have issues with their finances from the shutdown of their operations. And they said that they are considering reorganizing and possibly filing for bankruptcy protection. So Norwegian is one of the largest cruise lines in the world, along with Carnival and Royal Caribbean. And they have 2 ships based at Port Canaveral. So it will impact locally if they file for bankruptcy protection or if they cut back operations. So there's no certainty about what they're planning to do exactly, but they did indicate that, like other cruise lines, they are having financial problems by having to shut down their cruises temporarily.
How does that? Do you have any idea of the magnitude of the impact to Port Canaveral?
Well, there's 4 cruise lines based at Port Canaveral. Those ships based at Port Canaveral. Norwegian is one of them. And the other 3 are Carnival, Disney, and Royal Caribbean. Okay. So Norwegian is probably of the 4, they have the least impact of the 4 on the port's finances. But they still, if they did stop operating or did cut back operations, it still would have some type of impact locally.
Yeah. And how is Port Canaveral doing during this whole thing? Because, you know, they are one of the industries that are probably among the most impacted during this pandemic.
Right. Port Canaveral, about 75% of their business is based on cruise business. So either cruise line operations or the parking revenue that they get from the cruise ships. So their annual budget's about $108 million. So more than 75 million of that is based on the cruise business. And they've had to cut back on their staffing. They've furloughed about 53 employees, and they have a total of about 250 employees. So about 200 people are still working there, and 50 are on leave without pay right now.
Yeah, but you did write a story which was kind of good news for us that Carnival Cruise Lines plans to resume cruises on August 1st. Tell us what's happening with that.
Right. Carnival has 3 ships based at Port Canaveral, and they have been going since mid-March. But Carnival did announce yesterday that they will be planning to resume sailing on 2 of those 3 ships starting August 1st. And then they'll resume their overall operations for other cruise ships starting in September. Port Canaveral is one of 3 ports where they're starting early, and they indicated that they're doing this because they have a big operation at Port Canaveral, and also it's a good market for people to drive to get their cruises rather than fly. and people are already having enough concern about getting on a cruise ship. They also don't want people to be concerned about also getting on a flight to get to a cruise ship to get to the cruise port. So Port Canaveral and the Miami are two of the three ports that Carnival will initiate operations before other ports, according to the current.
And one thing that people often forget is that Port Canaveral is the second largest passenger cruise in the entire world after the Port of Miami, right?
That's right.
Operation going on in our your own backyard, but they, like you said, 70% of the business is passenger cruises, but they also do other type of business. And you did a story recently about wood pulp shipments coming into the port to make toilet paper.
That's right.
For us, who's ordering all that other wood pulp? It came from Sweden, I believe, right?
It did come from Sweden. They didn't say who the company that's going to be taking the wood pulp for the manufacturing, but there is a toilet paper products company in Orlando that might be one of the ones that were getting the shipment. And they also, the same shipment, there's a big shipment of lumber on that same ship, which is used in home construction. So it's a good sign that there's still demand for home construction in the Central Florida region.
Yeah, do you think that's a sign that maybe new construction has not slowed down despite the pandemic?
Well, I think the fact that the wood lumber is still coming into the port is a sign that there's still demand for it for construction. And another thing that's really strong at the port now is aggregate material, which is used in construction of roads, and the road projects are still going strong in Central Florida. The I-4 project, the governor had wanted to speed up construction of that project while the traffic was a little lower currently. So both home construction and road construction still going strong here.
Got it. And let's talk about beaches. Beach closures have been, I want to say, a contentious topic, not just here, but throughout the country and probably the world. Like I said, the Brevard County Commission voted to reopen beach parking because the beaches were open, correct me if I'm wrong, but beach parking was not open. And that was a way to stop people from coming. Now that parking is reopened in county beaches, some of the cities are still saying we're not ready to open parking for people to come to our beaches, right?
That's right. There's 7 cities along the beach side, if you count Melbourne, which has some beach areas, and 6 of them, the beach cities other than Melbourne, all had more stringent restrictions than the county did. So some of them still are not opening their beachside parking areas. The beaches themselves are open, but this is a way to discourage people from coming in from other counties into Brevard County to use the Brevard beaches. And the most of the parking is still closed along in the city areas. The parking is open for the unincorporated parts of the county, which the county commission has control over. So there is a little confusion, I think, from people, especially people coming from out of town, about where they can park. And one concern is that they're parking on the side of the road illegally or parking in private parking lots in strip malls or in restaurant parking lots where they're not supposed to be parking. And then the other concern is they're walking across A1A, which might be a little dangerous if they're carrying all their beach gear or surfboards with them and walking across A1A to get to the beach.
Yeah, and A1A actually, the speed limit there has been reduced from 45 to 35, by the way. And so which cities still have their beachside parking closed, so people have an idea where they should go and where they shouldn't go?
Well, I know for a fact, for sure, Satellite Beach still has it closed. I believe there's some areas in Cape Canaveral that are open and some that are closed. In Cocoa Beach, Lori Wilson Park is a county park, so that park is controlled by the county government, so that's open. But Cocoa Beach also has some city parks that are closed. There's also some closures in Melbourne Beach and in the Atlantic as well. So much of the beachside parking is still closed, but people are still getting to the beach by parking in areas that either on side road or a street on A1A and business parking lots.
Yeah, so that's causing a lot of confusion. We have a reader question from Robin Clark, who's asking if there's any indication when Jetty Park will reopen.
Right. Actually, just talked to the port this morning, and Jetty Park is not open yet. They're looking at it as possibly reopening at some point, but they have no specific date on it. And also, the other thing that just happened this week is the campgrounds that are run by the county, the 3 campgrounds that the county operates, they're reopening. But there's a big campground, also Jetty Park, which is still closed and probably will be still closed for some time. So yeah, Jetty Park's not open, either the campgrounds or the parking area or the beach right there. So that'll be the decision that is the Port Authority, the Port Canaveral officials will be making that decision, and they're looking at it, but have not decided what to do yet about that.
Yeah, and I remember a few weeks ago that campgrounds we were getting a lot of emails from people upset that some of the campgrounds were still open back then before they made that decision to close. So we'll keep monitoring what's happening there. But I want to talk, I mentioned that beaches have been a contentious topic, and we've had, there's a fascinating story still developing about the politics of the coronavirus, especially here in Brevard County. We had the chair of the county commission, Brian Lober, being removed from his position as the chair. He's still obviously a commissioner. And now Commissioner Rita Pritchett has taken over. Explain kind of what's happening with the commission. There's a lot of, are they getting more on the same page, and give us a little bit of the background as well.
Right. What happened was the county commission chair, Brian Lober, was also the chair of the Brevard County Policy Group, which made decisions related to the state of emergency. So some of his decisions, some of the other commissioners didn't feel he was on the same page as some of the other commissioners, and he offered to resign from the policy group if they wanted somebody else to head the policy group. So at some point, they did decide that they did want another commissioner to head the policy group. So Commissioner Lober is still the chairman of the county commission, but Rita Pritchett, who's the vice chair of the county commission, now has the policy group. Okay. Commissioner Lober, unlike some of the other commissioners, was stringent on things. He's a little more concerned about having some restrictions in place. For example, he supported having beaches closed for 5 hours a day on the weekend to cut down on the attendance at the beaches. The other commissioners did not like that. And he also voted against reopening the parking areas at next to the beaches when the other commissioners wanted them reopened. So Commissioner Pritchett is now heading the policy group. So she's being a little less stringent about the reopening of things than Commissioner Lober. I think he felt that based on the opinions of medical experts that the restrictions being lifted should have gone a little slower than they have been going. So just a difference of opinion between him and some of the other commissioners about what the proper avenue to go would be at this point and how quickly the county can be reopened.
Okay, and by the way, I believe I missed that Commissioner Brian Lober is not the chairman anymore. I want to make sure I correct that he is still the chairman. However, he's not the chair of the policy group. Correct?
That's right. Yes.
Okay.
And the policy group is a special board that takes action during a state of emergency. And there's 10 people on that board, and only 2 of them are elected officials, the county commission representative and the sheriff, Wayne Ivey, are the 2 elected officials on that board. The others are officials in other capacities like the emergency management director and the school board superintendent.
Yeah, very interesting. And another story that developed last week was that Brevard County Sheriff Wayne Ivey, when asked about the historic launch that's coming up on May 27th, that's scheduled for May 27th, that's going to be the first human mission launching from Kennedy Space Center in almost a decade. When asked about it, he said, after NASA is recommending people not to show up for this historic launch, he's saying that he wants people to come to Brevard County to watch this launch. We were expecting up to 500,000 people at one point. We don't know exactly how many will show up given the pandemic. But what did Brevard County Sheriff Wayne Ivey say?
Well, he thinks that that the county can control the social distancing during the launch, where the beach areas are pretty vast. And he feels that he wants to have people come to the county because there have been a lot of drop in local businesses, and he feels this will be a boost to business by having people come to the county, staying in local hotels, eating at local restaurants, shopping at stores. So he's very concerned about the economic impact of the coronavirus on Brevard County. And he feels that he doesn't want to restrict people from out of town from coming into the county to watch the launch. And also the county's tourism director, Peter Kranis, also weighed in this weekend, and he is in support of people coming here to watch the launch as well. So there's a little disagreement between the local Brevard officials and NASA, which is actually encouraging people to watch the launch on television or on the internet rather than taking a trip to the Space Coast to watch it in person.
Yeah, and our editorial board here at Florida Today, which I lead, has written an editorial asking crowds to listen to NASA and stay home. We don't believe that social distancing is even possible if you have 500,000 people congregating at beaches, parks, causeways. And as much as we want our business to thrive in this moment, we also want people's lives to be safe. So if you want to check out that editorial, I will be posting it in the comment section. Feel free to weigh in as well. Send us a letter to the editor to letters@floridatoday.com. We require up to 250 words. And Dave, so tell us before we wrap up here, which stories will you be working on this week that people should be watching out for?
Well, there's a big county commission meeting tonight where they're going to be discussing how to spend the federal aid that the county is getting. The county is due to get $115 million worth of federal aid, and they could use this for a number of different purposes related to coronavirus. For example, equipment that they might need, or overtime that the sheriff's office or the Brevard County Fire Rescue has had to use, or converting facilities so that there's more protection for the public when the county facilities reopen. So there's about a dozen different categories of things that the county can use this money for. And they'll be starting discussion tonight at the county commission meeting. And that meeting starts at 5 o'clock. And we'll, after the meeting's over, we'll be reporting on what happened at that meeting. So that should be a pretty big topic of discussion. And also other things we'll be working on, continuing to watch out for what's going on at Port Canaveral when the cruise lines resume operations, and also business issues about what businesses are doing now to recover their lost business from before. So there's a lot of topics that we'll be looking into in the coming weeks.
So make sure you check out Dave's story at floridatoday.com. And before we wrap up, today, as you know, is Giving Tuesday, and we're asking you to consider subscribing to Florida Today. You can purchase a digital subscription if you go to floridatoday.com/subscribe. It is because of your support, because of your subscription, that we're able to maintain the work that we do. We're able to keep Dave and I employed, and everybody who's behind us this Facebook Live happen. So please consider, without local news, we know that communities can be negatively impacted, and we're here. We're the only people who are actually watching everything that's happening in Brevard County with the same level of expertise that our reporters here at Florida Today have. Again, floridatoday.com/subscribe. There are special offers going on, so please consider supporting us here. Dave, I want to thank you for joining me today despite our technical issues in the beginning.
Well, thank you. Thanks for having me. It's good to be here.
And thank you all for joining us. And we'll have more of these as we continue to cover the coronavirus pandemic. Thank you for watching.